Welcome to Between the Covers, the show for readers and writers and lovers of books. I'm Stephanie, and I'm a publisher at Red Penguin Books, where we publish authors of all types and genres. So whether you have a book in your head, maybe a manuscript ready to go on your computer, or maybe even 300 sheets of loose leaf, napkins, post-its shoved in a drawer, visit us at redpenguinbooks.com and unleash your inner author. And yes, at least once a month, I do get actual envelopes or folders filled with pieces of paper. It does happen. I'm so thrilled today to be joined by three authors who have completely unleashed themselves, and I've been blessed to have them on previous shows. So I feel like a little reunion of sorts here. Katherine Abraham is piping in from India with Every Sunset Has a Story. You're going to love to hear this story, one of my favorites, and a beautiful cover there as well. Danielle Orsino is here with Birth of the Fae. We've gotten to meet Danielle and hear about it, and she just released an audiobook. So I am so excited to have her back and to talk a little bit about the difference between audio and visual and how that went down for her. And Dorothy Oger is here with her book of poetry, Flesh, Blood, and Love. Dorothy is quite a talent, a poet, a musician, a creative artist in every sense of the word. So you're going to love to see Dorothy. So first, Katherine Abraham. She writes of Every Sunset Has a Story. What would you do if someone told you that your existence, your very existence, could ruin the life of the one you love? Would you stay or would you leave? Will the insecurities of your past overwhelm your need to love and be loved? Would you leave the hand of hope? Keep your love bereft of the love he deserves instead of chaining him in the shackles of time and uncertainty. Quite a story set in modern day India and Pakistan. And if you're not familiar with the situation there, this is a great book to dive in. So please welcome Katherine Abraham. Thank you so much. I'm thrilled to see you always.
Same here, Stephanie. Thank you so much for having me.
Oh my goodness. And you're one of the reasons I'm loving the joy of Zoom, because I get to hang out with you all the time. This is great.
That's true. That's true. Thank you so much for having me. Absolutely. So,
in your own words, bring us up to snuff on what inspired this story. Give us a little overview, please.
Sure. So, actually, Every Sunset Has a Story was birthed out of this entire idea when I was just randomly surfing the internet and I came across a tiny little, I think it was about a paragraph, not more than that. There was a tiny little paragraph about an idol that was lost in the sands of time. And this bit is actually true. They say that this statue actually existed. And there were two families who were guarding it. And then there was a quarrel over who would take care of this entire statue. And finally, the last guardian alive, he was the one who carefully, I don't know whether he tucked it away, it just, got lost since partition happened and all of that. So I just happened to read it. And I said, why not reintroduce, and this has been a continuing journey for me, reintroduce the everyday Indian to the everyday Pakistani, because all that we see is, stuff that happens politically. And I said, we see every country has its own problems. You can't really deny them. But I don't want to be the person to cling on to only problems. We have a shared history, we have a shared culture. And I thought it was necessary that people across the globe, not just India and Pakistan, but people across the globe should get exposed to the actual realities and the similarities. In fact, I mean, we're always highlighting differences between these two countries, whether it's at the United Nations or whether it's, something that happens in terms of like when Kargil happened or the wars before that. So it's all too dark. And I decided that as a writer, I owe it to my audience that I bring something fresh to the table. And everyone's pretty much taken everything else. So when you say that you're a romance novelist in India, it's not something that people really expect you to be. You can very well pass off as a beautiful nonfiction writer. You say you're an essayist. You say you're delving into history. That is the actual history of time. And historians are accepted, everyone else is accepted. But when you say that you're a romance novelist, what happens is everyone then either they expect the same kind of narrative in every book. So you kind of get predictable. And I wanted to remove the predictability element completely from all of my novels. So, incidentally, Every Sunset Has a Story is not my first Indo-Pak novel. Silenced by Love was my first novel on this subject. And people who read it loved it. And they said, we want to read more about this. So that's what gave me the idea that why not just take a slight detour, get into history. So you'll have beautiful places. It's like a visual walkthrough when you read the book. These are places even Indians have not visited. I mean, it's across the border. Obviously, we can't really visit it. But there is the beauty of the research that came out of this book. When I was researching for it, I actually got in touch with people from Mithi, with people from Thar, thanks to lovely Pakistani friends of mine. They're all photographers, and they happen to be heading to Thar, and they said that, okay, you know what, we'll get you in touch with these people who are in Mithi. And I said, thank you. I mean, this is so much fun. And I began to have a lot of fun with the research. Unfortunately, the book got stalled a little bit thanks to technical issues out here. And then, I always say this, that God has a bigger plan than you and me. So I happened to just meet, red penguins on Facebook. And I said, why not send it to you all? And that's how it all came about. So yes, it's a very, very different story. If you're looking at the characters within, they are again very different because they're two journalists from two sides of the border. Now, Indians and Pakistanis are very, very familiar with a Hindu-Muslim love story, okay, which is like this cliched love story that comes up in every second movie. But I wanted to take it slightly on a different route. And so I said that, no, it won't be a Hindu-Muslim love story. It'll be a Christian-Muslim love story. So take that. and that's how I brought them together. And I said, there's a lot more similar between these two cultures and these two faiths. So let's just put them together. And that's how it all came about. It's a wonderful idea, just trying to, I won't say I have manipulated facts. I've not manipulated facts anywhere down this. But yes, the older folklore, there are legends. So for example, everyone is in love with Romeo and Juliet. Everyone knows at least Heer and Ranja, at least in India. But not many know the story of Umair and Marvi. And that is something that I wanted to highlight, because when I heard it, I was stunned. I was like, how can this story just be lost to time? Because this is a story about a king who, he abducts a young girl because he likes her, and he takes her to this beautiful castle with the hope that she will change her mind. And, she's actually engaged to another man. But she says, well, I'm already engaged. I will not, fall for this nonsense, and I am going to be me. So he says, no, if she comes to the castle and she sees all this, the riches I have, she might just change her mind. Who knows? And he takes her there. So he abducts her and takes her off. And there is this entire story which is spun around. So they say that, she went to a point where she even stopped having a bath, just so that people would get repelled and they would just stay away from him, especially him. And the beauty of it is that later on he comes to know that, it is the same girl's mother who actually weaned him. So she breastfed him. And as a result, he feels that, okay, you know what, this is wrong of me to do it, because then we become brother and sister.
Yes.
We might not be blood related, but I've still weaned on her mother's milk. So he says, no, let me go back. And, I have to make reparations. He takes her back with all due respect and leaves her. And the unfortunate scene starts off there, where she's actually rejected by her own people, who start doubting her because she's been away for a very long time. So chastity comes under the entire scrutiny of the, of the society. And there's this microscope that she's under. And she says, what have I really gotten myself into? So she is probably one of the few people who actually genuinely dies of grief in the story. So on her wedding night, she dies of grief. She just couldn't take it that people were all against her, even though she's very chaste and she's done everything to protect herself. So these are the kind of stories that people don't talk of anymore, unless, of course, you go down to that country. I want people to know about these small tiny tales, and that's how I think the larger plot also set up. So
I
that
love
is a little
that.
bit.
Oh, I love that. And it's so funny. You started talking about how um essayists and historians are looked about in a different way than romance authors. Now, of course, I'm American. We want to read the romance. We don't want to read the essays, the histories, which I think is so wonderful about you. And I'm so thrilled anytime I get to invite you along, because I want so much for people to know the situation. And we're not about to read a history, we're not about to read an essay, but we'll read a romance, sure, and learn more because of where you are, your insight, your knowledge, and your research, which makes people who want to just read romance learn more in the process, which I think is so
Absolutely.
fascinating. Like you said, we talk about how we're different, we need to talk about how we're like, and we need to learn so much more about what's going on. Even things you're saying that you say just matter of course. Well, that's over the border, so we can't go there. That is just so different than a Western mentality, that we need to recognize that. And it's so
Absolutely. And
important to
you know, Stephanie, we have a genuine problem here because when I applied, I mean, I actually applied when I was writing for my first book, Silenced by Love. I actually wanted to go there and see the place myself. And I
write.
applied for a visa. I got royally rejected twice, not once,
Right, right.
twice. And but the whole idea was that in the entire process, I realized that, they even came, it was wonderful meeting the Pakistani High Commissioner's office, the staff, they were really wonderful people. And the representatives, they were quite fascinated with the idea that there was an author who wanted to go across the border. Now, I didn't have any kind of political, strings that I could pull and, just hop off. No, I couldn't do that. So this gentleman, he actually took the time off and he explained to me that it was not really about them rejecting it. It was more about the Indian embassy out there being okay with someone coming from this side over there.
Right.
So, it's very twisted and it's very complex. And I don't think it needs to be like this, because I think history is something that there was one of these historians who very beautifully said it, that there are plural histories. It's history can't be read in the singular. So
Yes.
you might read history differently and I might read it differently. And it's all okay, because we just have to acknowledge the fact that there has been some bitterness in the past. We have had a dark past, but we don't necessarily have to have a dark present or a dark future.
You're absolutely.
Why can't we really move beyond that? So I understand people, and I always say this, I get comments whenever I'm writing. I do get readers feedback, and there are certain readers who are like, why don't you just move away from this fixation for Indo-Pak? I said it's not a fixation at all. It's just making sure that that shared culture does not get lost in all of this prejudice and bias, which I think we can all do without. There's enough of and more of darkness in the world. I don't think we need any more, and especially not through writing. That's the last thing I would turn to when it comes to. So when somebody says, romance writers are escapists, I'm like, it's a good thing then. If
Yes.
we are the ones, it's a good thing. If you think I'm an escapist, great. Because I think, from my perspective, I think there cannot be a better way of putting a reality in the most subtle manner than writing a fiction.
And
And
Catherine, this is why you and I get along so well, because I am so much of that same mind. Absolutely, so much of that same mind. Well, if you think your escapism, our next author is just made her own world. That way she can just escape from everything. In Birth of the Fae, Locked Out of Heaven is an epic fantasy adventure of heartbreak, rebirth, and hope that examines the bonds of family, friendship, and love. It is a fantastic tale of good versus evil in a beautiful world where the light fae and their potent elemental magic are tested by the raw power of the dragon riding dark fae warriors. Birth of the Fae, Locked Out of Heaven. Please meet author Danielle Orsino, who is just going to be so fantastic when you see her. Danielle, thank you so much for joining us today. And like Catherine said, we need to just escape, and you are the queen of escape.
Thank you for having me, and please come to the Vale.
Look at
We're
this.
very happy to have you.
Absolutely.
thrilled.
You are escapism personified there. Love the crown, love everything about it. And
I like to bring Aurora in and bring Queen Aurora right to your doorstep every time.
absolutely. And now Birth of the Fae is not only a digital book, a print book, now an audio book. So
Yes.
I'm so excited. Congratulations on the release.
Thank you so much. This was my dream, was to make it an audiobook, because I'm personally a big audiobook fan.
Are you? Okay, so you
Oh,
listen to audiobooks.
I love audiobooks. I have listened to the entire Anita Blake series, Kim Harrison's The Hollows. I adore audiobooks. So this was always my dream, was to hear and visualize and hear King Jarvok and Queen Aurora come to life. I didn't know when it would happen, but I knew it would happen. Just had to keep hoping.
So tell me a little bit for our viewers and all, you know, especially when you have, now you as an author have, I mean, the entire vision. You are seeing it like it's a movie already.
Yes.
And then to transfer that to an audiobook, tell me about voicing and selection. And I mean, how does that work for you? I mean, every author is different, but especially, you know, some authors are self-narrating, it's a memoir, that you are a fantasy world. So tell me a little bit about how this all went down to make sure that your vision that you can see in front of you was represented. Tell us.
This is very different. Doing an audiobook is extremely different than what I thought it would be like. I was like, okay, you get some voices, cool. You know, no. Skyboat Media called me after they read the book. They reached out to me and was like, look, we know you don't have an audiobook for this, and we think you should. And I was thinking, okay, yeah, I know I want one, but in my head, all I was thinking was, who could possibly play King Jarvok? And the minute I picked up the phone and Stefan, who is the CEO of Skyboat, I heard this deep baritone voice. I just went, oh my God, it's Jarvok calling me. And he just said, I kind of thought maybe I would be Jarvok. And I was like, yeah, okay. And in my head, I had always thought I wanted a female narrator, because most of the audiobooks I had read had always been just one voice. I didn't even know I could have two narrators. That stuff hadn't entered into my head. So when he had said, no, I'm thinking a male, female narrator. And he said, Gabrielle, my partner, would be the female voices. I'm going to provide male point of view, and we're going to blend this. I was like, okay, how does this work? And they sat me down, walked me through it. But then it was down to just vocabulary, diction, enunciation.
Yes.
It was hours on the phone of them taking me through every character's name and saying, okay, is it Zion or is it Zion? And I was like, no, it's Zion. And then I'd sit there and go, is it Zion? No, it's Zion. And I was like, no, that's the pronunciation. Lady Davos, they were like, well, by the way it's written, it's pronounced this way. And I'm like, no, it's Davos. So we would go through every character, and they would ask me questions, backstory that maybe I hadn't written yet, but they wanted to really get into the characters and the motivations, which I thought was so interesting. Because to me, as you said, I kind of played it in my head like a movie. Here were two voice actors saying, yes, we're going to get to the nitty gritty of each character, which was so amazing on my part. I was loving it.
Right.
But then even they said, would you like to read the dedication and the author notes? And I was like, me? And they said, yeah, you know, let's add these personal touches. So I got to read my author's note, my dedication. That's all me. The acknowledgements, I was kind of touched to do it. I was very nervous, but that added those personal touches. We went through the dragons. Should you be able to hear their roar? Should you not? What does an ice breather sound like? What does an acid breather? And when we figured out, you know what, I know what a fire breather sounds like. Think I know what a ice breather, but an acid breather, no. They were like, then we scrap it. Either we get all three sounds or we don't. They were very methodical, but then it came down to, I had a friend of mine, Jacob Rivera, who's an opera singer. He sang a Gregorian chant, Chaos Be With You, which is the tagline for the Dark Fae and their blessing. And I called up Skyboat. I said, look, I have this piece of music. I said, it's very subtle. I want to add it to the book. And they were like, send it over, no problem. Where would you like it? What do you think? And we had this great collaboration of, we think it should go here. And they were like, you know, we think it should go in 2 places. The chapter where the Dark Fae finally pronounced Chaos Be With You, this is our blessing, and this is what it means. And at the very end of the book. And I was like, oh, wow, that works out great. So we had all of this to bring the veil to life. But then as an author, what I learned is just because you write it doesn't mean that's how it'll get spoken. It's very different when you record an audiobook. So we had to go back, do another copy edit of the book, and they would send me notes every recording. I know you wrote it this way, but when we speak it and in dialogue, it really should go this way because how we're saying it. So they would go back and forth every day. I'd get an email of saying, we'd like to change this on this page. And it might just be something subtle. Like we want to take out the he said, because it's clearly they're speaking or something like that. You know, it was very little, but they were wonderful. It was just, when I first heard the whole thing, I was blown away. It was, there's Jarvok and Aurora talking, like there's Theodova.
So exciting.
It was great. And they put the perfect little nuances to the performance that it teared me up the very first time, because it was something I wanted as an audiobook fan. And for a lot of the nursing homes I had worked in as a nurse and done my clinicals, they had been asking me for an audiobook, because they said, we have audiobook hour now,
right,
where we just play audiobooks. And I hadn't thought of that, because I was like, oh, that wasn't something I thought of, like, how do I reach it out to more people? From a marketing perspective, I wasn't thinking like that, but they had just said, we have just an hour where we just play audiobooks, so we'd really like to get yours now.
Right. And
I thought, that's kind of a cool thing. And that's another great avenue that audiobooks, I don't think, get enough credit for.
No, I think
is that, yeah, there are people who don't, who the print is too small, they can't use it on a Kindle, whatever it is. And there's a whole audience that just love audiobooks for those reasons. And in the nursing homes, a lot of them use it as that's their time to sit and kind of, socialize.
Yeah, great idea for any of our authors out there with audiobooks. Let me ask you a question. Now that you've gone through this process, and it sounds like it went very well, which I'm thrilled. Yeah. Now, I presume, because I know there are going to be more books to be written, and I'm presuming that you are going to want audiobooks. Now, you had this whole process that you wrote, and then in a sense, there was this metamorphosis in order to even get to the audiobook. Going into your next writing project, is there anything that you would do differently so that, I don't know, that it would end up easier when you got to the audiobook? Were there things that, maybe now this time around, you're going to think a little more about name selections, or pronunciation or backstory, or maybe next time I'm not going to name someone this because it doesn't read as well. Anything?
Definitely going in for book 2, as I'm in the process right now. I am more cognizant when I'm writing of dialogue and how it sounds, and I am speaking it more as I write it.
That's always a good thing.
I always thought I played it in my head, but I've realized now that I tend to rush it. And I'm saying things a little differently, because what I realized listening to the audiobook is the context and the way they said things totally differently than the way I spoke it in my head.
Wow. Okay.
Completely different. And it put a different spin on a lot of the conversations in the book and the characters. So now when I've written some of the dialogue, I've gone back now and reread it. And I probably look like a total nut to people. I've reread it like so many different ways. I look like an actor trying like method acting. I keep saying it differently, like, should this be said in a whisper? And I've given more tonal context.
Okay.
To help because I think that will be helpful for the next audiobook. And now I've started making an enunciation chart,
Oh, good, good.
because that you have to turn, which I didn't know, you have to turn an enunciation chart in as well to an audio. And it makes sense, but I
Right.
didn't know how to write an enunciation chart. I had no,
It was your
I
first,
had no clue.
this was your first circus.
This is the first rodeo, and I
Yeah.
was holding on and riding on that one, but it was definitely an experience. This go around, I'm thinking about that dialogue a little bit more. I'm putting a little more cues in there,
Mhm.
because I think it also colors the world, I think, a little bit better.
Right, right, absolutely. Not to mention, just from a pure editing standpoint, I'm always telling authors, if you read your stuff out loud, boy, will you clean it up. I mean, there are things that
Oh,
if we just read it in our head, we our
Yeah.
eyes see what we want to see. But if you have to actually
Exactly.
say it,
it totally changes it. And I think that was coming from the audiobook, purely from an author writing standpoint.
mhm,
Listening to your own audiobook, is people were like, oh, that's so vain. I'm like, no, it helped me tremendously in my writing.
good, good.
It was a huge help. But it does, when you start saying it out loud, you realize how you think the character should sound, but how someone else can read those words exactly. It's different. So you want to kind of guide your reader. You don't want to take them by the hand and grab them and pull them down the path,
Mhm.
but you do want to gently say, no, come on, guys, we're going this way. Like, this is a little bit more how it sounds, because you are setting them up on that journey. You're the tour guide.
Yeah.
So you want a successful tour. That's what,
I'm
so
so
I think
thrilled that it went
it's
well, but also that you learned so much that you can bring to the next book.
definitely, and I think being someone who listened to audiobooks before was helpful, because I came in with a list of, hey, look, I've listened to this series, and from the first three, they had the same narrator, and then for some reason they jumped to a different narrator, and they pronounced all these words totally differently. And I know, as a fan, it's like, didn't you go back and listen?
Right.
Or how come this one's got an accent? This character now, I know the Laurel K. Hamilton and Anita Blake series was notorious for that. All of a sudden, Micah, one of the main characters, was Irish for like 2 books. And I'm like, when I listened to 8 of them. When did he become Irish? And then the brogue was gone. And I'm like, oh, okay. So I knew going in, I was like, I want this to be consistent, that my listeners will know, oh, okay, this is Jarbach, this is Aurora, this is Hoggle, this is how everybody sounds.
Mhm.
So I think, it's helpful, but the process, if you think you know the writing process going in, and then you do an audiobook, oh boy, you're taking on a totally different world, but for your own writing, it does help you.
That's wonderful. I'm so glad to hear it was a positive experience and a learning experience, that you can bring this to your next
Tremendous.
book. Your next book will be so much stronger and so much better because of it, which is amazing. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, definitely.
Our next author is not only a writer and a poet, she is also, and I love this term for her, an artistic harvester, a songwriter, and a generative coach. Please welcome Dorothy Oger of Flesh, Blood, and Love. So thrilled to have you.
Excited to be here and to hear.
And I love that artistic harvester term. That's just one of my favorites. When I saw that for the first time in your website, I said, I need a business card that says that for me. Tell us a little bit about you before we get to Flesh, Blood, and Love.
Oh gosh, that's the worst question. Give us a title of who you are. Yeah, so I've been writing poems since I was 7 years old, and so poem is my way of thanking the world for everything that I've been given. So that's how I consider poetry, and it's also a way to referring to what Katherine was saying as well. Writing as a way to create a vision of the future or the present that we want. We can help other people have that vision instead of dwelling into the past.
What came first for you? Was it writing poetry or was it songwriting? I mean, they're two halves of the same coin, but did you come to it from the musical perspective or from the words?
Ah, these are two different questions in my mind.
Very
So
true.
I started writing poetry first.
Okay.
However, I've always written, I think, with a little bit of harmony in
Oh,
mind, or a kind of melody. So a melody will inspire poetry. Or for instance, like Danielle was saying about saying the characters, the dialogues out loud and so on. That's something I do a lot with my poetry. So in that sense, that's how I know that it works, is when there is some form of melody or harmony or rhythm to it. And then some people commented it that my poetry looked like songs or could be turned into songs. And then much later, I started thinking, oh, maybe I can write songs then. And then I started learning music and, all these things. So from one thing, I got into another.
so you were actually writing songs before you learned music.
Yes,
That's
yes.
amazing to actually be writing songs and then learning to play so that you can play your own music that you had already written.
Yeah, and I'm also relying on other people to help me with that, because it's true. There's a lot to learn in terms of making music or making songs. That's I don't know.
Absolutely, absolutely. And you've got my favorite color ukulele behind you, so I'm
Yes.
all good. But you're truly a Renaissance person. You're an artist in the fullest sense of the word. Music, poetry, visual arts. You are such a creative inspiration on all fronts, and that's since you were 8 years old.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah, yeah. Well,
That
all different things came at different times, but yeah, I've embraced that part of myself more and more.
Yeah, you've embraced it and you encourage it in others as a coach. Tell
Yes,
us a
yes.
little bit about that before we dive into the book, about your coaching, how you got started, and how you work with people. That's just so fascinating.
Yeah, started a little bit, I guess, by accident in a way. As I changed career at some point, I started giving training, and giving training was with coaching. So I started developing that aspect. But I've always enjoyed sharing and helping people learn and acquire new skills or tricks or tips or that type of thing. So that's something I was always doing. And so now I'm helping people, just to inviting people to actually do what they're best at, to figure that
Yes,
out and to do it.
yes,
So whether it's through the coaching in helping them remove or transform obstacles, or whether it's giving them inspiration, or showing them that I'm doing stuff, like I could play the ukulele and make lots of mistakes, and it doesn't matter, because we're learning and experimenting. So yeah.
absolutely. And I thank you for that. We're allowed to make all those mistakes. Yes,
Yes.
we are. Well, you wrote of Flesh, Blood, and Love that it's poems arranged in three parts. And I don't know if I'll pronounce these correctly. Soham, which is about us as individuals. Namaste, about the relationship of I to you. And Ubuntu, which is the wisdom of mankind and those things bigger than us. I love those divisions. It starts with I, and then I and you, and then us
Us.
and bigger than us. What a
Yeah.
what a beautiful um, chronology that we go through there. But did you write them in that order? Did you start inward and then move outward, or how does that work? Or
No, it's really mixed. So if you look, I think there is a chronology at the end of the book where you can see
yes,
actually when they were written. So no, I think those three elements are present in me. I think probably even the Ubuntu is maybe the most prominent one.
mm,
But as I work through things, as I develop myself as a person, as I coach other persons, then I notice some things about myself. Who am I? What's my role? And I've used the word flesh for that, is the, how do I incorporate, how am I as a person here on this world? And that's the relationship of me to me. And do I need to be perfect,
Mm.
or can I be of flesh, and blood is more like the relationship with others, and
Right.
then love is like the infinite and the us and the nature and everything else.
Would it be your hope that a reader would begin at the beginning and progress through like an evolution, or is it that on any given day? Because I know some poets in their books actually ask their reader to open randomly to find something that speaks to them that day, but others want it to be read sequentially. Do you have a
Yeah.
preference for your readers?
I don't actually. So in fact, I call it the reading dance. So
Ah,
you can choose. So I explained that in the beginning as well, is, you
yeah.
feel free to choose and feel free to go. Some people like to go from A to Z and to really see the progression. Some people would maybe take the chronological table and see, I want to see that progression in
Mm,
terms of, when that poem was written or that poem and so on. And other people will just pick at random, or maybe be attracted by one of the sections and say, well, I'm more interested in the relationship, the I and the you, so I'm going to dive into that. So I'm a person of options. So I'm always happy for people to start from the end or in the middle or in the left, but there's no preference on my behalf.
and
In
that's
fact,
one
it
of the,
was a hard work to sort of organize
oh,
them, because I would like to give them chronologically and say, this is what I wrote. You do whatever you like with it, but yeah.
well, I'm so glad you said that about the dance, because that's one of the things that's different about your writing than say Catherine or Danielle, that the expectation is that you start at the beginning and you read through to the end. And I would guess that either of them, especially probably Catherine, would be annoyed if one picked up the book and just read the last 10 pages. She's laughing because she knows I'm right. Whereas with poetry, it is a different dance, and it's a completely different approach for the reader and for the writer.
Mhm.
You know,
Absolutely.
I while both Catherine and Danielle might have written different sections at different times and jumped around, and maybe she wrote the end first and then went back and fleshed it out. She definitely wants her reader to start from the beginning.
Especially not read, the final, the conclusion or the revelation elements, and then go back to the beginning.
Absolutely,
But
absolutely. But
you cannot control that. I mean, some people might read the last 10 pages and then decide that they want to read the whole thing from the beginning or not.
absolutely. And I often will say that to writers, especially nonfiction, that they can be jumping around as well. You cannot expect that they're going to read it the way you want. Even with fiction, you cannot expect that. Uh, I've been known to read the end first, I'll admit it. As you know, I am a little type A, so I might read the end first. And I've also said that about the other sections of the book, whether it's acknowledgments, a preface, a forward. Um, you can't expect that someone will read any of that, or that might be all they read. Some people absolutely read introductions, some people don't. So if you're doing even a book that's sequentially, you cannot presume that they all did. You didn't tie them to the chair and make them read that. But even more so with yours, that you kind of don't know.
Mhm. Yeah. I don't know, they could pick one poem one evening and just leave it at that. And maybe that's the only poem they need to read,
Right.
because that's a poem that has meaning for them, or that makes a difference for them. So that's fine by me.
Is that a little terrifying that every single page might be the one that will touch someone?
Oh, terrifying. No, I wouldn't say that. Um,
It's
More
really,
terrifying would be if none of the pages mean anything, right?
well, that's true. That's
That
true.
would be like, but no, I trust. Well, a lot of these poems have been shared with other people before, because
Mhm.
I tend to write and I don't want to hold on to my writing until it's published or anything like that. So I tend, maybe in my role as artistic harvester or I may have written a poem as a during a workshop or during a teamwork meeting, or so then I share that poem then and there. So already I know that there is some connection with it with some people, right?
Yes. Oh, and that's a great thing that I find poets do more than writers of novels and such, which is wonderful, which is sharing, workshopping, getting feedback on a more immediate level. So by the time you put the book together, you've actually been in the room watching people's reaction to your work. I would guess that there's a very good chance that neither Danielle nor Catherine have ever watched someone reading their book and seen reaction, or even read aloud. It often does not happen in the case of a novelist, where you have probably had that benefit, maybe
Yeah,
even for every page of the book, and that's what a gift.
yeah, yeah. Probably, I would say probably 90% of the book. Yeah, yeah,
That's amazing. That's amazing that you had that experience with people and that instant feedback,
yeah.
you know. Now,
It's
having put this all together, almost like I asked Danielle, since she had the experience of the audiobook, now that it's all together, and there is something very different about, even if you've workshopped 90% of this, about putting it together, holding it in your hand, and the reaction when it goes out there. Will it change anything for the next book for you?
oh, I'm curious to see about whether I will. I think what will change from, because I had a previous book as well before, where it was really purely chronological.
Mm.
So here there's a little bit more of a structure and organization. So I think probably in the next book there will be maybe even more focus on um, either a type of poem. So maybe I'm thinking of short, very short poems, or maybe, so there's, I think, because also I'm learning all kinds of poetry techniques like slam poetry and that type of thing. So I think that's going to influence the next book for sure.
That's fabulous.
Um, yeah, so I think I will remain true to sort of what I write, in a sense of I like to share, I like to write, I like for my poetry to resonate. So I'm going to keep doing that and keep publishing the poems that I feel are representative of that.
That's
And
amazing.
basically, yeah, there's rarely a poem that I put aside and I say, nobody has can read that. So there are a few, but
But I love the journey too. The journey, not only that you're bringing your readers on, but that you yourself,
yeah,
and you are so cognizant of the fact that you are on a journey. You've said, several times about wanting to put things out before they're polished, before, we're not holding these because it's all part of your journey, and
yeah,
you want people to recognize that. And
yeah.
I love that. That's so affirming to people, to know that we do not need to stay in a closet until we are perfect beings.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. In fact, I noticed, and that's what Danielle was saying as well. Every step of the publication process or the writing process is different, right? So when I write and I'm with a group of people and we are experiencing or going through things, and then I write a poem and I share that poem, that's very contextual. It's very bound to time and people and space, content and so on. Afterwards, when I want to share it maybe on social media or anywhere else, I sort of review that poem to take away any sort of or for anonymity issues, to take away any of the things that would relate to a particular group. So I may edit the poem a little bit, but
Mm,
when it goes into publication, that's even more editing,
mm,
in order to make it fit for the purpose of the book. So, and I'm pretty sure that recording them as well, you sort of say it out loud, and the rhythm you will adapt, or maybe you put some music to it. So that's also changes the. Uh, I know, for instance, in terms of slam poetry, when I've performed some of my poems on stage, which has been a rare occasion, some poems, actually some words appear, and they're better than what I had written before, right?
Mhm.
So so it's a living process. It's never ending, and that's what I like. And I'm kind of, my ambition would be to find a way to really go from writing the poem to publishing it in a book much faster, to have
Mm.
something that's very quick and dirty, and almost like photocopied paper with and that people can get it in their hands very quickly. And at the same time, when time passes by and you review your poems and you edit them, then there's also a quality that gets into that. So it's finding that balance between the immediate sharing and the 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 reflection that comes in you edit it later. So
Oh, I am so glad you mentioned that. I love that image of, we want to get it out there quickly. We want people seeing it and experiencing it. But yes, sometimes, when you sit on it, but I think sometimes people think I better not get it out there quickly because I need it to be, and I'll go again with that word, perfect,
yeah,
that the time will, perfect it. And I'm all for like doing our best, but I think sometimes doesn't that freeze us? And I
yeah,
think in life, I think we have a tendency. I always say to authors and such that I work with, we are our own worst enemies in so many ways. And I'm so thrilled to have the three of you on today because statistics say that 90% of the population wants to write a book, and you three are here representing success. You have climbed Mount Everest, shall we say, as far as people's bucket list items. You did it, and you are so inspiring because you're real live people who did it, and we want the other 90% to do it also. So, besides all the wonderful things you've said that are encouraging, any words of encouragement, tips, thoughts that you can pass along? Catherine, what would you've got a couple of novels under your belt, which I'm so proud of. And there are all these people who are saying, I can't write a novel. Yeah, you can. What would you say for them to get past that?
I do get this question a lot, and especially since the fact lies in the thing that I also was an accidental writer, because in many ways I never ever thought that I'd end up writing a novel. Let me be frank in saying this. I never thought I'd do that. It was just, I think it was in 2013. Yes, I've been writing all my life. I mean, ever since I was 6, I was writing. That's definitely there. But that was more spiritual. That was essays. That was, just tiny short stories and things like that. But the main thing is the trigger. Every writer needs a trigger.
Mm.
And that trigger came about in 2013 when my best friend said, listen, all that I want for my birthday, and I always have this habit. If someone's very close to me, I always ask them, do you want something that I could get you, or should I just decide? And she said, I want you to write a novel. And I said, Abby, you have to be joking, because I was in my final year of law. So it wasn't really the best time to start writing. But she said, listen, if you're not giving me that, I don't want anything else. So,
Wow.
yes. So that kind of became, it was like a stimulant. You can call it a trigger, you can call it whatever you want. But the thing is that I had two options, and which is something that everyone has. Two options. One is to go there, just start writing. And the second option is to just say, you know what, this is not my cup of tea. Let's just do it some other day. Let's just keep it on the bucket list, maybe at the bottom. So maybe it's a post-retirement plan for many. So I can't really say, too much to people who have already made up their mindsets that, it's probably going to be on our bucket list for a very long time. But if you do have a keen interest in at least sharing yourself, your raw, unedited self. And I think that's so very important, that an author is vulnerable, in many ways, on paper as well, because we are emotional human beings. And I see a lot of people, I come in contact with, in fact, a lot of people who are very, very shy from actually revealing their emotional selves. And I'm an emotional writer. So when I meet people, I'm saying, I just tell them, listen, all that you need to do is bring your emotions in black and white. And probably you'd probably come up with Dorothy, like, a beautiful poem that anyone can pick up and read within 5 minutes. Or you'd be like Danielle and you create an entire new world for yourself. Or you could be me and, just try to mend, as we say, mending bridges and building walls all over again. That's how it is. So that would be my simple thought. Just get out there and start writing.
Love that. Danielle, how about you? What would you say to our new writers out there?
I guess I'm going to build off Katherine a little bit. As I'm an accidental writer as well. I didn't set out to go down this path, but I'm glad the universe kicked my butt down it, and kind of threw me down the path a little bit. I would say don't get too caught up in the genre. At the end of the day, you're writing about interpersonal dynamics, whether you're writing about love, lust, fighting, whatever. Trolls fall in love the same way humans fall in love, the same way the fae fall in love. It's that interpersonal dynamic connection that you're trying to write. So pull from your own life and pull those emotions and then put them on paper, but don't get too caught up if you're writing a space fantasy odyssey with cowboys and aliens, or if you're writing about medieval times or rom-com. Just focus on that interpersonal dynamic and what you're trying, the emotion you're trying to convey. And I think the rest follows. I think what happens is too many people sit down to write the next 50 Shades of Grey, or they sit to write something that's already out there, and they get caught up in the genre and what the stereotypes are or the archetypes that they have to have, instead of just pulling from their own life and then building upon that. Because at the end of the day, I've said this before, in Birth of the Fae, Lady Serena, my mermaid, is based upon my best friend from high school, Jennifer, and our talks on the beach. So my girl talk chapter is all about Jen and I being, typical high schoolers, thinking we have the whole world figured out and sitting on the beach talking about it. All I did was add fins and call her Lady Serena. It's me and Jen. That's really what those chapters are about, and us having those, what we thought were deep conversations. The deep conversations are now about kingdoms and things like that. But at the essence, it's really about two insecure girls on the precipice of life. And that's really what it is. I just stuck some fins on her and stuck some wings on the other one, and hey, there we are, we're in the Fae, So I think for a new writer, just dive in and don't worry about your genre. You can always add the aesthetic elements later on.
Fantastic. And Dorothy, I know you work with aspiring writers, so tell us a little bit about, you could go on for hours about what to say to encourage them. So
Well, first of all, the advice that we've already received is really beautiful, both from Katherine and Danielle. I guess I would say consider yourself an apprentice writer. So you don't put the pressure in terms of having some form of outcome, like Danielle was saying about the genre or anything like that. It just, it doesn't matter at this stage. Just see it as an experiment, see it as an experience, and then maybe just to realize that you can write 3 lines when you are waiting on the bus, or in the underground, or waiting for the doctor, whatever. You word per line, you can build huge novels. So it's about also practicing, and especially it's a case for poetry. So you can start with poetry if you like, but or short stories, or things like that. But practice with it. For a while I did like I would do very short stories, like maybe it's 200 words or 300 words, very short, about waking up in the morning, and every time the mood would be different, and the sort of atmosphere would be different, and I would try to really describe sensations and thoughts and that type of thing. So pick anything and write, and the rest will come through practice. And the big ideas and the big novels, maybe it's not where you start, unless you write and suddenly you realize you have a novel. That could be the case, but just practice.
fantastic.
And don't attach yourself to outcomes.
I like that. I like all of this so much. What an inspiration. Let me just remind all of our viewers about your books and where they can find you. Catherine Abraham is the author of Every Sunset Has a Story. And once you find that, you're going to find there's more. So you'll definitely want to grab that and get started. Birth of the Fae by Danielle Orsino is now available both in print and digital and audio, and there's definitely more coming. So if you want to get on her mailing list at birthofthefae.com so you can keep abreast of all developments. And Dorothy Oger, the poet and author of Flesh, Blood, and Love. And definitely more coming your way from that. You can visit her at dorothyauger.eu. The three of you are such an inspiration. I always love having you on, and I have no doubt there'll be more from all of you, and I'll have you back on again. So thank you for joining me and for all of the inspiration to our viewers, and happy writing.
Thank you.
Thank you, Stephanie. It was wonderful being here. And it's
Thanks for joining us on Between the Covers. I hope you enjoyed the show.